With the Planet Fitness Black Card, you don't just get a great workout, you get a great perk out because your membership is packed with perks. For only $24.99 a month, you'll get perks like access to any of our 2,400 clean and spacious locations. Bring a friend anytime and both work out with tons of equipment that'll give you that big fitness energy. Relax in the Black Card Spa for a pampered perk and download the PF app for plenty more perks. Work out and perk out with the PF Black Card. Join today for only $24.99 a month. See Home Club for details.
Welcome to the #1 podcast covering Michigan State basketball. The Final Four is not on the schedule. Join Rod and me, Eric, as we dive deep into the Spartans to get you prepared for every game. Subscribe today for in-depth recruiting updates and fantastic interviews with today's important college basketball personalities like Robbie Hummel.
Thanks for having me. I have listened to your guys' podcast numerous times on drives throughout any Midwestern Big Ten city. So I am big fans of your guys' work.
Jay Billis.
And next time, hey, if anybody in Michigan wants a December tea time, call me. You wimps won't show up, but I'll be there. I'll be there and play in the cold. And Izzo will be in front of the fire with hot chocolate.
Coaches Thomas Kelly.
No problem. Glad to be back, man. Glad to be back.
Mike Garland.
You just can't sit there and trade twos for threes. You can't do it. You're going to lose. Coming down the stretch, you're going to lose.
And more. You won't find better coverage of Spartan hoops than you will get here. For both the casual and hardcore fan, come along as we take you for a green and white ride. Hey everybody, it's Eric alongside Rod here to preview MSU's game against the Alcorn State Braves. This is actually, I think, the first game in the Acrisure tournament. Game 2 will be against #1 Arizona out in Palm Springs on Thanksgiving Day. It's Thanksgiving season, so if you're thankful for Rod and the top-notch analysis he provides in every show, please consider supporting it either via a one-time gift on PayPal or Venmo, or on a recurring basis through Patreon or Substack. You can find links at tffinots.com/support. Your support in growing this community is extremely helpful to the show. All right, Rod, let's discuss the game Sunday against Alcorn State. Alcorn State's out of the SWAC. The 6 p.m. tip at Breslin on Sunday. They're 1-3 on the season. They just came off a narrow 3-point loss to UAB, who beat Maryland by a couple points, but it seems like about everybody's beat Maryland nowadays. They've also lost to Arkansas and Arkansas State, and their one win is against Loyola of New Orleans, which I've never even heard of that team. They were picked third in the SWAC, so their expectations would be pretty decent in the conference. Currently, they're sitting at numbered 260 in KenPom. They're really not very good offensively. They're numbered 184. They don't shoot the twos or threes well or free throws. And they're not a good offensive rebounding team. They're okay with a turnover percentage at 129. Tend to get the line a decent amount at number 53. But again, they don't shoot the free throws that well. Their biggest Achilles heel is they can't play defense. They're 329th overall on defense, and have just been killed from just about everywhere. They're sub 300 rankings both against twos and threes. They can't defensive rebound. They're number 319. They also foul a lot at 318th. So they kind of turn over teams a little bit. So their turnover percentage is 146. So they do get people turned over, largely buffeted by a 22 ranking and steal rate. So that's their aggressive defense. Apparently is maybe they are only saving grace on the court.
Yeah, they were picked third in the preseason in the SWAC. And so what I think this perhaps says, and this is not a surprise to anybody who pays close attention to this stuff, is that even if you're an upper-level SWAC team, on a national basis, you're probably not all that good.
Yeah, right.
I haven't looked at the numbers to confirm this, but I would venture a guess that the SWAC might most typically, the SWAC winner be a 16 seed than any other conference. Most years, it seems to me, the SWAC champion is a 16. And if they're not a 16, almost never are they going to be higher than a 15. So,
yeah.
That perhaps tells you something. We said, well, they were picked third in the league. That's maybe not as telling about their quality as you would think. Now, I saw Izzo's post game after Butler, and he was talking about this one, and he said, you schedule this game and you think it's going to be one, you hate to say it, but it's one you should win. And then you look and see they barely lost to UAB, who beat Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
But as we know, transitive properties don't actually work in the real world. And Maryland's been awful to top that. I mean, much. Right. I think most people, us included, had high expectations for Maryland. They have not looked very good. I watched a fair amount of the game against Villanova last night, and they ended up losing by 17. And believe me, that score was flattering to Maryland. They only scored 40 points. So anyway, I think with Alcorn State, unfortunately, there's a lot of things they do horrendously bad. They don't shoot well, and they don't stop the other team from shooting well. That's a pretty bad formula if you're looking to win basketball games,
Yeah.
The two things that they do well are they do generate a good amount of steals. So it tells you something about the ball pressure they're able to put on opponents. But without having seen them play, I'm going to assume that some of the just egregiously awful shooting percentages they're giving up is a result of that. I'm guessing that they're gambling a lot. And so when they don't generate a steal, it's an easy basket. That's my assumption, because I don't know that I would expect them to be, trapping pressure, because their pace of play is very middle of the pack. So typically if a team is doing that, like full tilt, you're going to see a pace number that's very, very high. And that's not the case with them. So I'm assuming we won't see that, but that's one thing they do well on defense. And then on offense, they get to the line, have been getting to the line a lot. They've got several guys who are averaging between 5 and 6 free throw attempts per game. That's a good number. The part of the problem, though, is they don't shoot it very well when they get there. So, yeah, not a lot to get excited about in terms of the Braves thus far. And this is one you look at that, despite Izzo's, what he had to say about this game, which I would expect him to say, this really isn't one that Michigan State should find itself troubled in. If they are, it's because they contributed mightily to it. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of these games, if you're someone who listens to the radio show on the way home or something, if you go to attend the games, these are the games that Izzo is almost universally upset and angry after the game, because, they may win by 35 and they might have, but he's like, there's this 10-minute stretch. We were terrible. And, he just gets really he's like over the top angry because, you should dominate these teams.
It's true. But, the thing is in these games, primarily, as long as you don't have an abject disaster, what you're doing is you're playing the game, not really the opponent.
Right.
So that standard is hard to meet. When you say, hey, we come in to this game wanting to do these 5 things at a very high level, and maybe you don't do all of them at a high level. It's also, if you can get a game to a certain stage, as we've all seen countless times in our lives, if you get a lead of a certain level, sometimes it's hard to maintain that intensity. Or what else happens is the coach starts giving minutes to guys further down in the rotation. Yeah. And so you lose what you had going that got you the big lead, because you got different guys, different player combinations. And frankly, if you're MSU, you want that problem, because that's ideal, that you've got a big cushion and you can give minutes to some guys and let them learn in a game environment. That's something that, Michigan State really hasn't had a ton of in the early going. Obviously the Duke game was never going to be that way. James Madison was not that way. That was one you had to play to win.
Yep.
Tennessee really wasn't that way in the exhibition. So where have you had opportunities to get guys minutes without worrying so much about what's going to happen in the 3 or 4 minute stretch they're out there? Well, you had Hillsdale, the exhibition. To some extent, I think Southern Indiana was largely that way. Mm-hmm. And then, last night, Butler was was a weird game because it was one that never felt like Michigan State was threatened from 14-14 on. It never really felt to me like Butler was really there. They never even the entire second half, and probably the last, I'd have to look at it to be sure, but probably the last, I'm going to say 25 minutes of that game. I don't think they were ever within 2 possessions.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So they were down at least 7. So, it never felt threatening, but yet it was never so comfortable that you could just say, hey, we're up 30 with 6 minutes to play. Let's roll out all 3 freshmen and Trey and one of the bigs and just go with it the rest of the way. It wasn't quite that comfortable, So it would be nice to have this. There aren't a whole lot of these on the schedule. So it would be nice if MSU can turn this game into one that ends up being more of a learning exercise for certain guys.
All right, well, let's go ahead and talk about the rosters. We'll start with the starters, obviously. This is brought to you by the Brothers of Just Two Gutters. They sponsor the player that Michigan State needs to keep in the gutter. So if you have gutter work that needs to be done, there's no better place to turn than the Brothers of Just Two Gutters, because that's all they do. They just do gutters. They specialize that. They do fantastic work. I've had them work on my house. They've worked on my wife's office. And again, just do great quality work, super friendly people. And they get things done in a hurry. You can get 10% off if you mention Final Four when you get your estimate. You can contact Greg on the Metro Detroit area or Kurt over on the west side of the state in the Grand Rapids area. Again, they'll set you up and they'll get things going. And they work in just about any weather. So even if you think that there's no way anyone would work on your gutters, like cleaning them out, repairing them, or replacing them, they will. So give them a call. And you can find the contact information in your podcast player below or on the episode page and the website at the Final Four on the schedule.com, just on the front page. All right, so we'll begin with Byron Joshua, 5'10", senior point guard, averaging 12 points a game on 29, 9, and 90 shooting. Tied for his team lead in assists with 9 in the 4 games they played, but unfortunately has 12 turnovers. And he's also second the team in steals. So, and he also tends to draw fouls, as you mentioned before. He averages about 5 free throws a game.
Yeah, good quickness, not a lot of size at 5'10", but he's one of, I mentioned, this team's big problem is they don't shoot it well and other teams shoot it very well against them, which is a tough way to live. You're going to see a few guys with single-digit 3-point shooting percentages. So lest you believe that Michigan State is the only team that's struggling from 3, they are decidedly not. And something tells me I have more faith in some of MSU's guys turning those numbers around dramatically than I do some of the Alcorn State Braves. But it's also tough when your starting point guard has more turnovers than assists.
That's a problem. But that, I think, exemplifies sort of their team. And of course, the reality is too, there's very little expectation for them to win many games in the non-conference out of conference. This is right. This is how they basically pay for their program, right? Their athletic department in some respects by getting paid to go play these games. So next player is Jeremiah Gambrell, 6'3", senior, averaging 8 points a game on 36, 40, and 50 shooting, and plays about 23 minutes a game.
So he's one guy that has managed to hit some threes this year. So he'd be a primary perimeter shooting threat to worry about.
And next is Takedron Thorne, 6'4", fifth-year senior, averaging 10 points a game on 48, 50, and 0 shooting in 29 minutes played.
He's the other guy. So those 2 guys that I think you've got to worry about as 3-point shooters based on the numbers, and then that's pretty much where it ends. One thing to mention about this team, though, and you might be hearing Eric saying senior over and over again. This is a very experienced team. Now, they're not all guys with experience playing together, but a lot of them are. So it is very much a veteran team. They're mostly, there's some juniors, but I think there's 1 freshman. But other than that, it's a lot of seniors and 5th-year guys.
And speaking of seniors, 6'7" senior Jeremiah Kendall, leading the team with 21 points a game, 10.7 rebounds a game, shooting 55% from the floor and 60% at the line. and averaging a little around 5 free throws a game, and also leads the team in steals at 7.
This is the pick to keep in the gutter.
Pretty
This
obvious.
is the guy. He's doing some of everything for them. He's been very good, not really a perimeter threat, but other than that, there's not much to complain about when you're averaging plus 20 in scoring, you're a double-digit rebounder, your tops and steals. He's doing a lot of things well for them. And he's taken his game up a notch. Last year at Alcorn, he was a double-digit scorer, and I think was somewhere around 4 or 5 rebounds per game. But clearly, his role has increased, and so have his numbers. And let's put it this way: if Michigan State can keep him relatively contained, it's almost impossible to imagine Alcorn State keeping this close.
Yeah. And at 6'7" for this team, this is a very small team. He's one of the tallest players in the team, too.
Yep.
Next is actually 6'7", JUCO transfer Daji Benet. He's originally from France. He played his first game against UAB, scored 7 points and had 6 boards. Was 2 of 2 from floor and 3 of 6 from the line.
Yeah, and it should be noted that once again, and this is the case with some of these smaller schools that Michigan State's playing. We saw it with Southern Indiana as well. It's proving difficult to get accurate or any information at all as to the health status of certain guys on these teams. Because unfortunately most of them don't tend to have a lot of media attention, meaning it's hard to find newspaper accounts of their games. And then you're reduced to whatever you get put out by the program itself. So like this kid, his first game playing after he transferred from JUCO this year was the most recent game, the loss to UAB. So I'm going to assume that he starts because he started that game and he played reasonably well. But I don't know. There'll be some of these guys we talk about next where they didn't play against UAB, but they played a lot before that. Are they going to be in there? I don't know. So we're guessing is my point. Not that it should matter.
Right.
We're not talking about guessing about what a top 10 team is going to bring in.
Yeah.
We're talking about a team that it really doesn't matter, or it shouldn't matter at least.
Shouldn't matter, right? Yeah. The 5 beat writers covering the team, right? They're not. Yeah, not providing information for you. And now we'll move to the suspected reserves. Jalen Hawkins, 6'2" transfer from Morehead State, who's at his 4th school. So, wow, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
He's averaging 8 points a game on 36, 7, and 88 shooting, 1 for 14 from 3. So he's not shy about shooting them. Leads the team in assists with 9 assists to 5 turnovers. How do you play in 4 schools? I mean, you must have to get how do you get that many transfers? I'm trying to figure out how that works out.
Well, he's not the only one who's done it. He's in his 5th year.
So maybe he's a grad transfer at this point, right?
He is a grad transfer. He is a grad transfer.
3. You got the 1 free one. Did they get a free one?
He got the
COVID
1
too?
free one. He got
maybe a medical
red shirt. Maybe might have red shirted. Got the transferred. Got the 1 free one, and then got the grad transfer. So that's how. 1 for 14 is a rough start shooting the ball. There's no two ways about that. But because of his experience, they seem set. He's going to play a lot off the bench.
Well, someone's got to play. So next is Michael Peugeot, a 6'2" junior wing. Didn't play in the UAB game. And again, I looked at the official injury report, and there's nothing listed for Alcorn State. So he's averaging 6.
Believe me,
this is your life, right?
I've put in the time I put into doing this preview. Probably a quarter of it was fruitlessly searching for any information about the status of a couple of the guys on their roster.
But you probably know where Alcorn State is located, right?
It's in Alabama, I believe, isn't it?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. That's all I know too. So 6.7 points a game. He gets 5.3 rebounds a game in 20 minutes, 40% from the field, almost 90% from the line. And he's another one of these guys who averages a lot of free throws, 6 a game.
Yeah. And what's interesting about him, so 6'2", but they list him as a forward, and he's not shooting threes, which I look at it. He's averaging 6 free throw attempts per game. He's averaging better than 5 rebounds per game. So this guy obviously plays bigger than his listed height. So he'd be interesting to see. But again, I just don't know if he's going to play because he didn't see the floor against UAB.
He sounds like one of those YMCA players. Next is Jelke Gaines Wyatt, 6-foot freshman point guard, averaging 5.5 points a game on 58% from the floor, 67% from the line. He hasn't shot any threes, and averages around 11 points a game with a 1-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio.
Yeah. Again, the only freshman in their rotation. So
Yeah,
this is a very old team. He's not, but we've talked about this, and I think if memory serves, Southern Indiana was this way to some extent as well. Maybe not quite as extreme, but
close,
I know we brought this up, that I think that the general feeling was, well, the mid majors are going to have guys who show out well as young players and then decide to transfer up. And so that means the mid majors are going to constantly be rebuilding with young players, but that has not proven to be the case. I think you're seeing, because this was a lament that coaches had. I remember this coming up, and I kind of had the same feeling. Like, well, a lot of times in the NCAA tournament, when you would see a mid-major go on a run or just pull off one upset, they tended to be, historically, they tended to be teams that had been together for a while, were filled with juniors and seniors, right? That was usually the formula. It wasn't typically that you saw, a team from the Sun Belt filled with freshmen and sophomores do it. Usually an experienced team. And the thought was, well, the portal, originally this thought was around just the concept of grad transfers. The portal just solidified it, that, hey, anybody who really shows out at that level, the vast majority of those kids are going to look, if they're doing it as sophomores or juniors, they're going to look to transfer up so they can get on a bigger platform, and they're going to believe that's going to set up professional aspirations for them. In addition to just satisfying the dream of actually playing in front of big crowds and having a good chance to go to the tournament and all the other things that come along with it. But I don't think, let's put it this way, the mid-majors aren't rolling out typically teams with a bunch of guys that have played together for 3 and 4 years. That part is true, but they are rolling out teams that have a lot of veteran players. I mean, we're seeing it when we break these teams down, and it's a fair question for people to ask, where have all the freshmen gone? Because there just don't seem to be as many as there used to be.
It's just like the question, where are the workers gone? Yeah, the same question, right?
High school. If you're a high school kid, I know I've said this on this podcast before. One thing that's been made very clear to me as I look at how this stuff is unfolded. If you are a high school player who is not considered an elite prospect, so I even mean, this is true probably for guys, say, in the 75 to 150 range in the rankings, and you get an offer you like, you'd better grab it.
Yeah, right.
Because if you wait, you might be the cakewalk, the record might stop playing with you without a seat,
Oh, the cakewalk. I hadn't thought of that in a long time.
Yeah. Well, now I put that into your mind. But that's kind of the scenario. And it extends down to, the kind of kids who, because of academic reasons, or they were just late bloomers, or they weren't playing on the shoe circuit, so they weren't seen as much. The kind of kids that typically used to get opportunities at places like Alcorn State, they're not as readily available anymore.
Yeah. And you definitely feel like if you're those high school grads, there are people that, if you're not taking those spots, they might find a transfer they like more and take them over you too, right? I mean,
you also can't blame these coaches.
No,
because if they've got an opportunity to say, hey, I want to have guys that have been through it, that know what it means to play at this level, because every game counts for me in my career, and I want to win as many of them as I can. Okay, I get it. Yep. You probably do think, we applaud Tom Izzo, most MSU fans at least, I think, applaud Tom Izzo's whole deal about culture, and he wants to be a program that's not transactional, that focuses on development. You do it over the course of time and all that stuff. And of course, I celebrate that too. But let's also be honest about it. Tom Izzo can do that with few repercussions outside of unhappy Twitter mobs, which don't really matter in the end, because he's Tom Izzo.
Yeah.
Most guys coaching, the vast majority, have very little rope to play with, so I can't blame them for doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. The ultimate responsibility is winning, whatever that takes to win, within the rules, right?
Yep.
That's a little dig at another school. All right. So next is 6'6" grad transfer Rodrigue Massanet, transfer forward from Austin P, averaging a little under 3 points a game in 17 minutes, shooting 50% from the floor and 40% at the line. Just hit 1-3. Yeah.
Decent size at 6'6" for this team, which doesn't have a ton of it. So he'll play a role.
And then the big giant of the team, Alex Tasinovich, 6'10" junior, averages 2 points a game and 1 rebound in 8 minutes, shooting 60% from the floor, and has only hit half his free throws.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether maybe he gets a little bit more run due to his size, but as it stands, he's playing a deep rotation role, not double-digit minutes.
And you have to imagine with Arkansas and with UAB, they had seen size as a team.
They would have had reasons to play.
If they weren't playing him then, they're not probably going to play him against Michigan State, most likely.
Correct.
Roderick Jones will be next with 6'2" junior guard, averaging 1.3 points a game in 8 minutes, and he's 1 for 7 from the floor on the year.
Yeah, not 1 for 7 on the year is not an encouraging start.
No, well, explains the 1.3 points a game.
Right.
So, finally, Trayvon Stoudemire, as we reach the end of the bench, 6'8" junior, averaging 1 point a game and 1.3 rebounds a game in 11 minutes.
Yeah, and we'll probably see him because, again, he's got at least a semblance of size, and they're going to have to do something to try to match up with what Michigan State. Yeah, and he's playing regularly enough that I would expect him to see a turn or two each half.
So before, I know there are 4 or 5 Alcorn State grads screaming into their podcast player, right, or their radio right now. Yes, Alcorn State is actually in Mississippi. It's in Lowman, Mississippi.
Oh, my bad. I knew that. Shame on me.
Founded in 1871 and it's the first black land-grant college, interestingly. Founded in 1871.
I knew that. That's not surprising because they're a member of the SWAC. So,
yeah. So anyway, apologies to Alcorn State.
Yeah. Very sorry about that.
Let's move on to the 5 keys of the game for Michigan State, brought to you by Nudge Printing. Nudge Printing, where you can get great Spartan apparel and other collegiate apparel. You can't go wrong. It's super comfortable, high quality print screen materials. They've got t-shirts, sweatshirts, all very breathable and very comfortable. They're our favorite workout clothes as a family, just wearing around the house or like game day like today. You can get 20% off if you type in Final Four at the checkout, a coupon code. And again, you can't go wrong. Nudge Printing at nudgeprinting.com. If you're interested in our logoed stuff and you want to look cool with our new logo, you can go on over to the Final Four's on the schedules.com/merchandise. And there you can find ways to access our collection at Nudge Printing, either a t-shirt or a hoodie. Great thing to get. And, maybe you want to get for someone for Christmas, who knows? But you can't go wrong going to Nudge Printing. Again, at nudgeprinting.com. And let's go to the 5 keys of the game. Number 1, one we kind of alluded to earlier, the focus. This is an easy game to overlook. You just beat Butler, feeling pretty good. Next, you've got number 1 Arizona. And so it's easy to forget that you're playing Alcorn State in between, especially a team that is, clearly you should overwhelm.
Yeah, and this is very much a classic play the game, not the opponent scenario. At least that's how it looks coming in. If you're Michigan State, you want to continue to do the things you've been doing better. Sometimes that can be hard to do when you come in knowing that you're expected to win easily. And you've also got another big game knocking on the door. So that's the challenge, I think, is can you stay locked in for 40 minutes and play at the level that you want to play at? Sometimes in these games you can get sucked down into the morass with a bad opponent. That happens. So they want to avoid that.
This is a team that has not played a locked-in 40 minutes yet this year. So it'd
correct.
be very challenging to do it against this team, right? But you'd hope so. Hope this would be a good way to practice that.
I'd say Butler was
Yeah, that was
maybe
pretty good.
locked
Yeah.
in is strong, but they pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. So the second key to the game is defend without fouling. We mentioned a number of times a lot of players see the free throw line, although they don't make many of their free throws. They certainly get there a lot, and so maybe just don't fall for the shot fake. Because maybe that's how they get all their fouls.
Yeah, the numbers tell the story that Alcorn State is going to one way or another, and I would expect it's via penetration.
Yeah,
they're going to look to force the issue and force you to foul them. And, Michigan State, the last two games, if we look at Duke and we look at Butler, now we can talk about the quality of the whistles and, et cetera, but the reality is they've given up a fair amount of free throw attempts to the last couple of opponents. So for MSU, I think that's something that would be an area of emphasis. The defense has been at a pretty good level overall through these first four games, but that's the one major criticism that I could lob at it in the early going. And this is a team that has played in such a way that suggests that's exactly what they're looking to do. So it'll be a challenge for MSU to see if they can check these guys without doing an excessive amount of fouling.
Number 3 key to the game are the boards. This is a team that has not shown much ability to defensive rebound at 319th. They're not a good offensive rebounding team. And Michigan State has certainly shown some signs of getting better than they were last year, certainly, but even improving throughout this year.
Yeah, and so I think this is a game where you want to keep good habits of things that you've been doing well or reasonably well. Keep that going. And so you want to see MSU continue to pound the offensive glass. And there's really not a lot of excuses available for not doing that. This opponent has been a truly terrible defensive rebounding team, and they are small.
Yeah.
So, you would hope that guys like Carson Cooper, Madi Sissoko, Malik Hall, depending upon the minutes they play, Cohen Carr, Xavier Booker, that those guys can really make hay.
Right. And you got to imagine, like, athletically, you got to be, not only do you have size, but you have athleticism over them as well.
Sure.
So should really help you. The fourth key to the game is sustain.
Yeah. And so what I'm talking about there is, we've alluded to in a couple of these other points. MSU started, I think, to show some good signs even while taking the loss against Duke. And then I think against Butler, they were able to sustain and build upon that. And so what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about some individual stuff. So that means AJ Hoggard playing better over the last two games. That means Malik Hall finding an aggressive tone and continuing to do that, seeing the results flow from that. Also on a team level, that they haven't shot the ball spectacularly, but they've shot it a lot better than they did in the first two. I think particularly in this game, but also in the Butler game, but also in the Duke game as well, you're seeing MSU's guards getting into the paint with much more intent and getting good results when it happens, when they do get there on a much more regular basis. We're seeing AJ start to do that more regularly again. You're seeing, I think in the Butler game, Jeremy Fears did the best job he's done this season at getting himself into the lane and making things happen. Tyson Walker continues to do it. Now you'll hope maybe that we can see Jaden Akins maybe do a little more of that. But you want to see all of those things, both on the individual level and the team level, continue to be sustained and improved upon so that you're building on it. Because MSU is still not, let's make no mistake, the positive things seen in the Duke game and the Butler game are not in and of themselves enough. You can't look at those games and say, well, if we can just match that level of play consistently, we'll be fine in terms of achieving what we're looking to achieve. That's not the case. It's got to continue to get better from here. And so that's what you want to use this game to do.
I was just going to say, basically, you're just saying we need to water and nourish, sort of fertilize those green shoots.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Keep the green shoots sprouting.
Finally, the number 5 key to the game, put them down early. This is what you always want to do as a parent when you got little children. You want to get down early so you get to bed, get to the next thing.
There's two aspects to this. So the first one is obviously if you can get off to a good start, you put Alcorn State in a spot where it just kind of sucks the oxygen out of the room for them. They aren't able to find any confidence. And you've got a victory where you don't have to sweat as much, So that's the first reason for this. The second reason is, and I alluded to this earlier, I think if you're Tom Izzo, you have to be, we talked about this coming out of the Butler game. There's still, I think rotations are a work in progress. I still think they're playing around with different combinations, seeing what can work, what can't. And you'd like them to have at least a handful of quote unquote free opportunities to do a little more of that. But primarily, I think that's going to mean getting minutes and the allocation of the minutes they get to the younger players. So we're talking about the 3 freshmen and Trey Holloman. I think that's what a game like an Alcorn State can potentially bring you, is an opportunity to get those guys real chances with live bullets flying, which won't come as easily. The decision to play Trey Holloman and Jeremy Fears together for a 5-minute stretch is tougher to find when you're in Champaign-Urbana on a Tuesday night than it is a game like this. So, and you've only on the non-conference, of course, we know how MSU schedules. You still got Arizona left. You still got Baylor left. You've still got Indiana State left, which will be, I think, a challenging game. Oakland is an in-state opponent, so that's one you've always got to be careful of. There aren't a lot of games left that look like obvious opportunities to really extend the minutes for your younger guys and also get your older guys some rest. We're seeing a lot of games in a fairly compressed way in this part of the schedule, which is not atypical for a Michigan State November. It seems to happen this way more often than not. So it would also be nice from that aspect of things to say, hey, Tyson, we only need you for 22 minutes tonight.
Right. We
don't need 32. Something like that. Let's hope MSU puts the hammer down early, I guess is the idea.
Yeah, I was gonna say that if Tyson Walker's playing 30+ minutes, there's some real problem in this game. So I suspect we won't see agree. That, right? All right. Well, I don't think there's anything more to talk about the Alcorn State. I think we'll catch up with you after the game. Make sure again you visit our sponsors. Wonderful sponsors at the Brothers That Just Do Gutters at brothersgutters.com. You can also check out Nudge Printing for your Spartan apparel at nudgeprinting.com or their fabricatedcustoms.com, their website where they do custom t-shirts and things for businesses and various events. Until next time, the Final Four is on the schedule. Go Green.
With a Planet Fitness Black Card, you don't just get a great workout, you get a great perk out because your membership is packed with perks. For only $24.99 a month, you'll get perks like access to any of our 2,400 clean and spacious locations. Bring a friend anytime and both work out with tons of equipment that'll give you that big fitness energy. Relax in the Black Card Spa for a pampered perk and download the PF app for plenty more perks. Work out and perk out with the PF Black Card. Join today for only $24.99 a month. See Home Club for details.
Concerned about looking overdone? Botox Cosmetic, out of botulinum toxin A, delivers subtle, predictable results. Botox Cosmetic is a prescription medicine used to temporarily make moderate to severe frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better in adults.
Effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Don't receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow and eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Tell your doctor about medical history, muscle or nerve conditions including ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. For full safety information, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
See for yourself at BotoxCosmetic.com.